Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we have an interview with Aaron, co-founder of Illuvium. Massive shout out to Aaron for this one. I'm just recording this intro afterwards because the interview has ended up being about an hour and 15 minutes. And I just want to give a massive shout out to Aaron, but also Kieran and Von Neumann. The three of them have also all been very open with the community with information about the game, what they're working on, and just very helpful for setting up times with me to actually get on and do these interviews. So massive shout out to those guys for that. But I just wanted to re-record this intro so I could give you a quick summary of what's in it. I will have timestamps, so if you want to bounce around, you can. But we go through Aaron's version of the origin story of Illuvium first up. Then we go really deep into the combat gameplay, the actual how combat will work, because that's something I've been very curious about because we haven't really seen any info about that. So we've got a bunch of info about that. Then we go into the open world gameplay. We get a bunch of info about that. And then we cover off some smaller topics towards the end and go through some more of that info. But once again, this was a really interesting interview for me because I feel like we got a lot of new information about the game that gets me really excited. But anyway, guys, I do hope you enjoy. So Aaron, introduce yourself, and your version of the origin story of Illuvium, and then we'll get on to some gameplay related stuff.
So thanks for having me on, Kevin. I really appreciate being able to come on and give a little bit of insight into the game so that everybody knows what's going on. As far as the origin story goes, it's fairly simple. I was doing my own thing and the other two co-founders were doing their own things, and they actually came to me and suggested that we should start a game. It started off being something that was a little bit more simple than what it is now. I mean, it keeps on getting more complex as time goes on, but I mean, the original pitch was like really, really simple. And we sort of had a little bit of to and fro on, there was a few things about that I was like, I'm not super keen on things. So I just wanted to know how much I could change about what they were looking at. And we came up with something that I think was pretty good, which was effectively just a RPG collectible similar to the old school Pokemon, where you go around in a world where there's different creatures that you can encounter and different things that you can collect. And then you go and beat them up and you enslave them, and then they become your pets, and then you end up loving them, you know? And that was effectively how it started. But the actual game originally was like, it's gone through a whole bunch of iterations. There was a period where it was just a 2D game that became quite difficult to be able to manage with what we wanted to do as far as it being an auto battler. So we decided to change from that. There's been a lot of changes throughout the project, but I think at every stage that we've changed, we've done it for the better.
Yeah, definitely. That's sick. And I know when I spoke to Kieran, he said how you weren't big on the idea of the Pokemon at the start, but you sort of met in the mid ground. What would you have, if you didn't have the Kieran input, what would you have actually gone for the full production?
So the original idea, I was actually working on something. I was trying to skill myself up in some various areas. I was trying to really get comfortable inside of the Unreal Engine because I'd previously talked about a different type of game with Kane that would be a blockchain based game, but I won't go into the exact details of that one because some parts of that might end up coming over into the Illuvium space at some point in the future. But it wasn't so much that I was against Pokemon. It was just I'm a little bit older than Kieran, and so I didn't have the same connection that they did. But they convinced me that Pokemon was the way to go, and then I guess I convinced them that just having a basic sort of a battle mode the way that Pokemon is maybe not the best way of doing it, and we could probably get a bit of both worlds together. So it's not that I don't like the collectible genre or anything like that. It was just more that it wasn't something that I was specifically looking at. Yeah. And that was something that they were super passionate about, and they were right. They showed me a bunch of videos of people having cards revealed on stream and stuff like that. And after I researched through, I went, you know what, they're right. This is the way to go, and we can merge it together. I think the biggest part about the project, the the part that I never ever would have thought of doing is the decentralized finance part of it, and that's purely Kieran. He was in the space for I think about maybe 6 months before then. He was he sort of navigated it. He's pretty successful in terms of working out all the ins and outs of what projects are successful, what they have, and stuff like that. So the original plan was that I would do the game design and Kieran would do all of the tokenomic stuff. And I think over time it ended up becoming a bit of a blend. He's had a bunch of input into the game design, and I've had a bunch of input into the tokenomic side of it. But when it comes to the individual pieces of the tokenomics, it tends to be that I might come up with an idea and then I will ask him about it, or I'll sort of integrate it with an idea that he's already had. But in the end, he sort of acts as like the final control on the tokenomics side. And if he's not happy with it, we don't do it, because I trust that he knows that side of it more.
Yep.
And then when it comes to the technology of the blockchain, I know how to do Solidity code, and so it's sort of like he might have an idea and then he'll run it past me and see if that can work. But now we have a big team, so it's there's a lot of moving parts in there. It's not one person that's deciding everything.
Definitely, and like you guys have been expanding that team ridiculously. How many are you guys up to at the moment?
It's well above 100 now. I don't know the exact number, but we also have a couple of studios that work with us as outsourcers that have very particular expertise on things that we maybe don't need long term, but in the short term we need that particular thing. And so if you counted all of the people that are on all of that, I think it'd probably be maybe 130 or something like that. But internal team members is definitely above 100 for sure.
Nice. And so you are the gameplay man. So I've got some questions that I'm curious about. So we haven't had the gameplay trailer yet. Obviously that got delayed. We're probably 6-7 weeks away from that still before it comes out. But I wanted to get an idea on the actual gameplay, both aspects. If you can answer it, if you can't, it's fine. But the first thing I want to look at is in the actual combat scenarios, I just want to get a bit more info on how that's going to function. So obviously you have your Illuvials. From what I understand, you're going to drop them on the board before the game. The game's going to start. Then they're going to run and interact based on AI and positioning. But what type of abilities do they have? So I know on some of the concept arts and stuff, we have like their ultimate abilities. For instance, the water buffalo, that one had that he taunts all enemies, gets thorns or something like that, and poisons.
Yeah, they grow out. Yep.
How many like do they have? Multiple abilities and then an ultimate ability with like an energy gauge that builds up across time, or how's that sort of interact?
So first of all, I just say that even though I may have came up with a decent amount of the original design of it, we have a team of over 100 and we're all very collaborative. So everyone, all of the co-founders put in ideas for what the game should be. Anyone, whether they're like a programmer or back-end or marketer, anyone can pitch ideas into the game, and a lot of them do make it. So it's not just me. But as far as the abilities goes, we originally started with the idea that we wanted it to be fully data-driven and fully deterministic. So data-driven just means that like all of the stuff should be able to effectively be known through a spreadsheet. You don't have a bunch of code that's custom to a character that you have to design for every character. Yep. You just basically mix and match functions and stuff like that are already existing, right? So we'll go into that a little bit later on when we expose to the community an editor, which will effectively act like you can make a spreadsheet, and once you've filled out all of the details, a character is now made. Now that won't have anything to do with the art, and there is actually quite a bit of art side stuff, not just the assets, but hooking it up. But as far as the simulation is concerned, we have what we call a combat engine. That doesn't care about the art at all. It runs on a whole bunch of systems. We use AWS Lambda for it, and effectively that just runs as a piece of code. doesn't need to know anything about anything else, and it can just run and tell you who would win this match and stuff like
And
that. So
with that sort of thing, it obviously would take into account RNG of critical strikes, debuff application, all that sort of stuff. But it can run it all essentially instantly. So you could essentially have skip battle where you just go, okay, that's my team, you drop your team. It's instantly known what's going to happen. It calculates the RNG at the start of the battle, and then they battle and you just watch it play out what's already been.
Yeah. At the moment, the battles on a normal computer take around about 1/10 of a second inside of the simulation. We're trying to get that down to be really low, because the lower it is, the more opportunity we have to get AI to crunch those numbers and come up with decent statistics for the characters. But the general idea is that it's all separate, and the deterministic side of it means that all you need to know is that, like, plopping them down onto the battle board. Once you've got that done, and you know that random seed, once that's done, everything else that flows on from that will always be the same every time. So what that allows us to do is do a lot of testing on particular configurations and stuff like that. And it means we don't need to have a server that sits there and runs the game, and then you just sort of listen to the server. You're running it on your computer, and the other person is running it on their computer, and it's just guaranteed that the result will be exactly the same. So there's no middleman between the two. So it actually makes it kind of cool.
So with that scenario, I'm assuming stats like critical strikes, so there's going to be RNG elements in it.
There's only a very small amount of RNG.
Okay, really so the rest is like all fixed stats, so it's a calculated damage, so it's easier to understand. So you don't have as much of a chance of go into the battle, but this could have gone, like, this dice roll could have gone differently to change the battle. There's not as much of that.
Not as much, but remember, our board is a lot more finely tuned than other boards in a lot of other games, which has caused a massive amount of troubles to get it working well, because it means that we can have characters of any size. But the point of that is that when you place a character on the board, it would be really hard for you with your own mouse to be able to, like, put everything exactly in the same place over and over again.
Yeah.
Because it's so finely ground up. And then that little tiny bit of RNG combined with the complexity of the system, it ends up being like, you know, the butterfly that flaps its wings and causes a hurricane. It would be very difficult for someone to manually make the same game happen twice.
But obviously, like you said, both computers know exactly where everything's placed. They both run that formula.
Well, they're a computer, so they know the exact coordinates of everything.
Yeah, that's cool.
And they just input that into the system, and it just spits out who won.
Yep.
And it spits that out about 1/10 of a second later. So.
Yep, nice. Yep. And with those abilities, like how many do you have? Like, you've got an ultimate ability. Is that based off of a gauge?
You have 2 abilities in the game total. So the way that most auto battlers work is there is what's normally referred to as like a basic attack. Right, which is like I punch you, or I use a wand on you, or I have a bow or whatever. So that's the standard one. The way that works is it's just on a timer. If you're in range and the timer is counted down, and you don't have some sort of a debuff on you that makes you blind or makes you disarmed or something like that, then you can attack. So you attack. Right? If you're out of range, it'll walk you into range. If you have a full energy bar, instead of doing that attack, it'll do your Omega ability, which is like the ultimate. So really there's only 2. The difference between ours is that the attack abilities and the Omega abilities, they're effectively a list. So you could have an infinite number. And the way that our system works is it takes in a selection criteria. So it could be that the selection criteria is cycle through my attacks. So we can have a character that does like 10 damage, 20 damage, 30 damage, 10 damage, 20 damage, 30 damage. And it'll just keep cycling through those 3 attacks. We can have it be that I'll do 10 damage, and then I'll drop a giant nuke that covers the entire field. And then my 3rd attack is going to knock you up into the air. We have all sorts of, like, we have it so that it can trigger. So if you have a certain amount of enemies around you, you change what your attack is. If there's no
That's
one
cool. Yeah.
around you, you can change what your attack is. If you have,
So sort of
if
like
you're low health, anything.
sort of like they'll have like passive abilities on top where it's like if this condition's met, this happens type thing.
It's actually, so with regards to the attack abilities, it is a passive selection.
Yep.
Right? But we actually, technically, we have three types of abilities. We have what we call innate, which is like what you're calling passive.
Yep.
And innate abilities will always happen when a condition is met.
Yep.
Whereas with the attack abilities, that what I was talking about is there has to be a selection. Like I'm ready to do an attack. I'm in range.
Yep.
I'm ready to do which attack out of my list of attacks do I do. Now, to be fair, almost all of the characters that we've got in the game are only like either one or two, and they're still the same sort of animations, but they might have different effects to them. So like the third one might knock you back, or the third one might do
add a poison
anything,
or debuff, right?
or add yes. And the point about it being a data-driven game is, let's say I want to test out a character with a knockback. So instead of doing a normal attack, when I'm low health, I want it to be a poison. And then I say, you know what? I don't like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, instead of it being a poison, I'll make it a knockback, or I'll make it be there's a zone underneath them, or it'll be a cone behind them of damage, or propagations, or like whatever we want, we can throw in there. We have 150 Illuvials that are across approximately 50 lines, and basically we try to keep them with the same theme throughout a line. So, for example, the axolotl that we have in the game, the stage one is called Atlas, and then it's Axon and then Axodon. And the first one gives you a shield on his face. So it's like, we call it vapor barrier, and it's effectively just like a giant mask of water, which helps him to absorb damage.
Yeah, that's that one
when
in
you
the
get
first
up to,
trailer, yeah.
yeah. And when you get up to the top one, it's the same type of thing, but with that character, when the shield expires, if it expires naturally, then it explodes. So if it can sustain a certain amount of damage without the shield breaking, if it breaks, it just goes away. But if it expires, it does this explosion of water damage in an AoE, which damages the people around. So when we talk about this like butterfly effect, if you are on 10% left of your shield and you get hit and you don't get off that explosion, maybe you don't kill that character that was next to you, and then that causes him to do more damage to you, then you die, and then it just can totally change the way
and if you had have dropped him 3 mil back at the start, he would have had an extra second to get into combat. It would have lasted, it would have exploded, all that sort of stuff.
Exactly right. So there's all of these different interlocking parts. So technically they have two abilities, which is attack abilities and omega abilities.
And omega ability is based off of an energy bar that generates from attacking, taking damage, and then there might be some other effects that, you know, increase energy and stuff like that.
There's really three types, because it's innate, attack abilities, and omega. And the distinction between all of them has nothing to do with how they function. They're all effectively the same, but it's how they are triggered. So and innate happens because of a condition, and it'll always happen every time that condition happens. An attack ability happens when your attack timer has gone down. So if I go to punch you, I might be like this, and then eventually I finish that. Now I can punch you again, and I have to wait until my attack. It's based on your attack speed. And then the omega abilities is based on your energy meter getting full. So effectively, all three of them have separate triggers. We call it a trigger, and when it triggers, it'll happen no matter what. But what happens in the guts of the game is almost identical across all of those things.
Nice. And obviously with the Illuvials, we have one variable, which is their level. You can level them up. Obviously, you've got the evolution stages as well. Is there going to be any sort of like, I don't know how you would call it, like gear or runes or something that else that modifies how strong your Illuvial can be?
Yeah, there's a few things. So we start off with what we call type data, which is, that would be the thing that the community is editing. You would be editing what the base of this particular character is going to be. but then we have two sets of stats that sort of get padded onto that. And then we have one piece of equipment that gets padded onto the character as well. So the first one, we call them random combat stat modifiers.
Yep.
So when a character is minted, we give it a hash function, and then we use that hash function to tell you roughly like how lucky you are. You've got the base stats, and then you get a little bit of a bonus.
Yeah, so like, for instance, a Ramfy would have an attack range on its base stat of X to Y, and you fall somewhere in between that. So
exactly,
not every Ramfy is going to be the same stat-wise across every stat. The way I look at it is kind of like, I know you're not a big Pokemon guy, but for anyone that is Pokemon, IVs in Pokemon games, whenever you catch something, they have an innate value for every stat up to 31, which is variable. But the main base stat stays the same on the character. You just get that slight variance that can give you a little bit of an edge. So there will be increased value on the combat readiness, but none of will those impact the ranked PvP?
No,
okay,
not
so
at
it's
all
balanced in the ranked PvP.
Yeah, when you go into ranked, your RAM fee is the same as anyone else's RAM fee. We strip back those bonus stats, and so the ranked version is all based around the default values, not on the bonus values. It's only when you go into encounters or when you go into the Leviathan arena where those things come into effect. So if you get a really good Ramfy, he can help you to progress through the game in terms of your collections. But he's not going to help you win a tournament.
But he's going to
apart from just existing.
He's going to help you win that ETH in the Leviathan.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's nice. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure I've got this right. If you have a Ramfy, when you go into ranked arena, can you choose whether it's a Ramfy, a Ramfight, or a Ramfire?
Yes.
Yes. So you
have to build a deck.
Yeah, a really important one for like competitive players is you don't have to evolve everything to its final stage. You can play in ranked PvP with the baby stage, but it will come out as the evolution stage.
Yeah, the way that we look at it is to get it up to its final stage, not only do you have to play for a long time to level it up, but you also have to effectively collect 9 of them.
Yeah. You got
three make the stage 2, and then 3 stage 2s makes the stage 3. So you have to get 9, and that can be quite difficult for people starting off, and we don't want them to feel like, and obviously there's a cost associated with each of the shards that they get. So you want people to have the ability to play ranked and have fun. Now, technically, you still have to have those characters at least at a stage 1 to be able to play it. You don't get to go into rank and just play anything out of anyone's deck. You have to build a deck, but for the purpose of the next ranked battle, you save out your cards, or we call them shards, and you go into a battle with someone and you just hope that you've played it correctly. Because let's say you decide to make it a Ram Fire and you only had a Ram Fee, but now your opponent starts to trick you and they play a bunch of water characters and you're left with a big part of your deck was this expensive fire character, and now it's like, well, that gets combated. It's a little bit countered, and maybe that was a bad choice. So every stage of this game, you have to make decisions, and sometimes you're going to make the wrong ones.
And when you talk about building a deck, that's the next aspect I wanted to go into. How does the deck building and placement system work? Is it like you have a deck of X amount of cards and you get to play them, but each card has an energy cost and you have a total energy limit? Is that pretty much the gist of it?
That's basically it. Yeah.
I mean, how many cards per deck?
We haven't decided yet how many cards, because we do need to do play testing on that to get to something that feels about right. We're thinking something in the vicinity of 30. But that's not guaranteed at this stage. It could be fewer, it could be more. And the other aspect is that people have to have 30 cards to be able to do it. So there'll be a slight delay before we start doing the ranked stuff from the collection aspect as well.
Definitely. And with that, so say you got your deck, then you get dealt a hand and you've got to play that round from the hand that you get dealt.
No, we don't have that. So you can play anything that's inside of your deck.
So you have access to everything that's there. And then obviously you're going to be limited. How many, on average, like bit of a ballpark figure, how many Illuvials do you see being on the board for a team? Like
If you
in
were
the
to
energy
play a
limit?
bunch of if you're going to play a bunch of low energy cost ones, at the moment we call it control points, just because we haven't come up with a better name for it. So it'll
Yeah.
probably change, but internally it's control points. If you were to play a bunch of characters that have low control points, then you would probably be able to cap out at about 7.
Yep.
And if you were going to use high control point characters, then you'd probably be able to get away with about 4. There's a little bit of an interplay where you can't just play all low ones. So you have a limit of how many you can play. So if you play a bunch of weaker ones, you might end up playing lower than what the total cost point limit is.
Yep.
So you want to have a little bit of a mix, but we still want people to be able to do like an overwhelm the opponent strategy by having like a bunch of characters.
Yeah.
And then someone else just wants a few characters that are just going to beat the crap out of everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And with that deck of 30, is there anything that's not an alluvial in that deck? Is there like power up cards and stuff like that?
Yep. Yeah. So getting back to the question about what are the other stats and things like that, there are, on top of there being the random stat modifiers, there is also your level modifiers. So every character has a particular class. When you level up, you gain a little bit of health.
Yep.
Or your max health, and you also gain a stat which depends on what class of character you are. So as you sort of progress them upwards, they become more powerful in a particular area, and that is based on what type of character that they are, or what we call what class.
Yep.
But then on top of that, we have a system which is called enhancements. And with enhancements, you go out into the overworld and you will collect a bunch of different like things out of the ground and out of plants and all sorts of things. And then you can fuse them together to make an enhancement, which when you put it onto your alluvial, it will alter them in a way that allows them to sort of have a different identity. It won't change their class, it won't change the guts of the character, but it could be that you have a character that once it gets down below, say 20% of its maximum health, it has a trigger for say 3 seconds where it becomes invulnerable.
Yeah, and with that sort of stuff, and when you say you're gathering that in the open world, and then you play, and then you use that, and that enhancement becomes a card in your deck, and you can choose when you're setting your field, you can choose which one it goes on for that effect.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Interesting.
You choose. You basically, if you've played Teamfight Tactics, they have. It's not the same as ours in terms of what it does, but it's similar in the idea that you get these components that you can chuck on to a character that changes them. The difference with ours is that we're trying to make ours be a little bit more style changing, because the whole point is that we want people to effectively be able to juke their opponent and trick them into thinking that they're doing this thing, and then you do this thing, right? Because the whole purpose of our game is for there to be a high level of counterability, right? You should be able to see what your opponent's doing, have a think about it, say, I reckon that this guy's 5th placement is going to be this one. I can sort of see that he's trying to get that way, and so I'm going to make him think that he's going to trick me, but really I know what his last one is going to be. So I'm going to place down this one, and he's going to think this is just a basic character. It's just added for the team. And then my final character that I place down, when combined with a couple of other choices, is going to make that little guy now become quite an impactful thing. And he then plays his big, powerful card, and it happens to be, for example, fire. And my little water guy, with all of his upgrades and like being in the right position, because he does more damage to fire characters, it's like, so I've won that battle. And it doesn't mean you're always going to win, but the idea is that you should feel a sense of who won the drafting phase.
Yes, and with the drafting phase, that's my next thing. How will that work? Like you drop one character, then they drop one character, then you drop, they drop?
I will say that's still in heavy development.
Yeah.
As in the purpose is we've been trying to build out enough characters to get enough variety. Yep. So when we say that a community member will be able to go and make a character in 5 minutes, that only works if you've got this database of sort of modular components that you can chuck in, right?
Yeah.
We're in the process of finalizing those modular components now, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to lock in a particular drafting phase or things like that when we're not 100% sure of these things. So we've played with a few different ideas. One would be just I play whatever I want and you play whatever you want, and then it just gets revealed. That doesn't feel very interesting to me.
There's no
we could go like you could go a drafting back and forth where it's like I play one, you play two, I play two, you play two, and then I play one to finish it off. And that might work, but there's a few other things in there that we're trying to look at either adding or adjusting, which means that it's going to take us, I would say it'll probably take a good 3 months of the private beta before we're 100% certain that we're making a good choice to go to the open beta. And then probably it'll take about 6 months after that to be able to find out little tiny tweaks where we can say, you know what, from feedback from everybody that's been playing, we've got the main guts of it, but we want to just add these little quality of life improvements and stuff like that. And that would lead us in towards starting to do bigger tournaments.
Yeah. And the cool thing about that is you can also run tournaments where you have like custom rules in that sort of thing. Like I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like something like almost like, competitive chess, how you got the timer where you place, you hit a timer, whoever has the time difference, you get an attack boost on top of that.
We can
different stuff like that.
We're open to everything.
Yeah, it gives you plenty of options to actually deploy with that.
Yeah, we've had a look at the idea in chess. When you play a tournament, there's a thing called berserk mode where you can get half of the time of your opponent, but you get more points if you win the match. Yep. So it's a way of saying like, I'm a really high level player. I'm going to go into this battle. My first few matches, I'm up against someone who's lower rated. I don't care if they have 3 minutes and I only have a minute and a half. I'll destroy them anyway, and I'll get those extra points. Yeah. So we've played with the idea of having our own version of Berserk mode, where you get fewer control points, or where you get less, one less placement on the board, and obviously that'll come down to balance changes and stuff like that. But game modes do take a long time to develop, but once we've got the first couple of game mode iterations, it does get a little bit quicker. Yep. And we are definitely not scared of changing things up. If we say this is ranked and we love it, and then everybody goes and plays it and they say, you know what, we don't like it, we want it to be like this, we're more than happy to adjust and make sure that it's something that people like.
Yeah, 100%. And staying in combat for a little bit more, I've only got a couple more questions on the combat.
It's all good.
With you've obviously got elements and classes, is how I call them. You've got like your rogue, your slayer.
We call them affinities and
affinities.
Classes.
Yeah. So and then you've got you've got water, grass, fire, or nature, whatever you call it. And then like water and grass, once you evolve, becomes poison. All that sort of stuff. Now, I'm assuming like they're going to have their own synergies if you play multiple of the same one type thing. And with that, you've got like the different classes. Are you going to have the standard sort of, you've got some characters that are like tanks, others that are melee DPS, range DPS. Do you have any healing classes?
Yeah. So the classes, there's 5 base classes, and they are, I'm pretty sure everyone knows these, but if they don't know them by now, I'm sure we've leaked them out at some point.
Oh yeah, they've all been seen.
So we've got fighter, rogue, guardian, empath, and scion. And if you are playing a fantasy game, a fighter would be sort of like your brawler or whatever warrior type of character. Warrior, you would have rogue is effectively a rogue, like a high damage dealer, and then you've got guardian, which is a tank. Yep. You've got empath, which is a support, and then you've got scion, which is magic damage. We call it energy damage in our game. And then those are the base classes. We then have another 15 classes, which are the combination of every single one of those choices.
Yep. And then obviously elements, what do you call them? Affinities are the same, where you've got the base ones and then you've got the different combos that make different things. So it gives you better options. And from what I've been able to see, it's on like the second stage of evolution, you get like the merged class, and then on the third stage you get the merged affinity. Is that correct? Something like that?
It can change.
Change, yeah.
So yeah, so some characters will pick up. We sort of look at the character and try to work out what its identity is.
Yeah.
And if it's a character that needs to upgrade to Inferno before it upgrades to Slayer, for example, then at stage 2, we would make it Inferno. And then at stage 3, it would become Slayer, or whatever it happens to be. So it can chop and change. There's some characters that have a double affinity from even stage 1. And they just a little bit different. We've got some that have no affinity. And yeah, so there is a few exceptions to it. There's a character line that's actually a very big character line that I can't go into, but it has
I've seen you
somewhere in between.
I won't bring it up.
No, I don't think anyone knows what this.
Not the links?
This line. No.
Okay.
The links has no affinity at stage 1, and then it picks up a class at stage 2. I haven't gone in the details of how you
evolve that thing,
make it. How it fuses into being one of the 5 choices, and then when it upgrades to stage 3, it again evolves and it picks up its affinity. And so the links is highly configurable, but it's not quite as powerful because it never picks up a double affinity in class, right? So it's got its own identity. I'm talking about a different line that no one has seen, that I've made very, very strongly locked down, and it'll probably get revealed before game launch, but it'll be a cool reveal. I'll just say that it'll be a big reveal.
Nice.
But in terms of the way that the synergies actually operate, it's sort of like a Scion character, because it's like that mage style of character. When there's multiple of them on the field, they do extra splash damage. And that means that if you've got a type of board where things are clumped up together, it will be very effective. Right? And the way that we've set up all of the bonuses that they get is the bonus for 1 sort of really hurts one of the other classes. And then that bonus really hurts another one and hurts another one. And so it goes in a chain of these 5 base classes where each one is very strong against something and also a bit weaker against something else. And so if you manage to play a bunch of rogues and I play a bunch of fighters, I've got an edge there because the fighter counters the rogue.
And with that, if you've got a Slayer, which is, I believe, a rogue and a fighter, both those attributes, do you get to synergize with both of them, or do you only synergize with other Slayers?
It's really interesting. We're not fully done on this. This is probably the last thing that I need to get it to be like really good. It's just something that I haven't been putting it off. It's just I've got so much other stuff to do that I haven't let it sit enough to get them all perfect. But I really do think that we've got a good setup for the way that this is going to be, which is that you synergize based on whatever the base stuff is. So if you have a Slayer, it gives off the fighter and the rogue synergy to everything else. So by putting that Slayer down, you're helping out all of the fighters and you're helping out all of the rogues, but the Slayer itself doesn't get the affinity for either of the base ones. But what it does do is it gets its own. And so to put it in perspective, so we have a class called the Arcanite, which is a fighter and an Scion, and that one, when it does damage, the synergy bonus that it gets, because it's a fighter and a mage, is that it converts some of its basic attack damage into energy damage. So the bonus is like it sort of feels like what it would be to be a merger of those two classes. Like
Yeah.
if I was
Like
good at
like a melee
smacking,
mage, yeah. And it's
exactly,
like, and obviously that energy damage. Oh, well, not obviously. This is just me assuming is going to like have energy damage is going to be more powerful against armored units, sort of thing.
exactly, yeah. So it makes it good against the things that the other one was good at, and good against the other, like the combination.
Yeah.
So for example, like the rogue plus a scion, when you put them together, the rogue does very big spike damage.
Yeah.
Right, we call it it has a high savagery.
Yeah.
And so when it hits, it doesn't hit fast, but when it hits like a truck.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas the scion does this splash damage, right? So the way that that combined class works, and I'm just not saying its name because I'm not sure if that
I
rogue
haven't heard this one. I was hoping you'd say
it. I don't know. So I won't say it, but what I will say with that one is that the plan currently is that it will do this big spike damage. And if it executes the overflow, the overflow of that damage. So if they had 1 health and you hit them for 1,000, 999 is going to explode over everybody else.
Yeah.
And so it allows that character to feel like what it would be to be someone who is like a rogue and a mage at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually, I just enjoy all that stuff. And now with that, we have the affinities and the classes, but you also have your main character that you're playing as, and they get the weapon. Can they all? And so they have like I'm guessing if you got a dagger, you become a rogue. There'll be
that's correct. Yeah,
different progressions with that.
There's 5 classes of weapons.
Yep.
1 for each of the base classes in the game, and then you can add something to those weapons to make them have a particular affinity. So you can have a fire sword or a water sword or a nature sword.
Are you going to have to like burn an NFT, like burn a character into the sword or something to give it like the power up, or is it going to be like something else you explore and find, or am I going too deep?
No, so you're not correct, but it's going to be it's not going to feel fun. Or at least you're going to want to do it. Like, I don't know. The troll in me says that I want to have elements of this game be that it's very hard decisions.
Yeah.
And so when you upgrade this thing, it's going to be a bit like, oh, do I want to do this? You know, like if you can think about
it's
it,
like a no turning back type scenario.
Yeah, well, if you want to fuse something from stage 1 into stage 2, you know, you're burning 3 little cuties, you know, and then, you know, you might want to get up in the game, or you might want to sell it, or whatever you want to do. But burning those 3 is a tough one. This other one is, I don't know, it's different, but it feels
it's a big decision.
Just as bad. It's a decision. Yeah, you'll be like, oh, do I want to do this? And you'll want to, because the weapon is one of the best ways that you can improve the Villain character, right? So you've got these guys that have a suit, which gives you your defensive stats, and you've got a weapon, which gives you your offensive stats, and also your affinity and class and your Amiga ability is all dependent on the weapon.
Yep.
And then you can just get sort of like your level up over time, and all that's doing is giving you the control points. So in terms of how much power you have, it's all built around the suit and the weapon, which we call your armaments.
And with that,
that will determine what you are.
Will the suit and weapon be NFTs, or is that like just an in-game thing?
Oh no, they'll be NFTs.
NFTs as well. And so you'll have your different appearances and all that sort of. That's sick. I love that.
You'll have in the game Illuvium 0, you can research materials
to craft
and materials is like you can scan an Illuvial. You can't capture it in Illuvium 0, but you can scan it, and you're effectively getting its bio data, and then you can synthesize that into a skin.
Yes, that's cool. Yes.
So you can have a suit. And again, this will be something that we have to build over time, because obviously there's 150 of these characters, and it's not like a 10-second job to texture something out.
Yeah,
so
100%.
We're gonna build it, and I hope people don't expect that on day one there's going to be just literally everything done perfectly. We do have to keep adding these things.
Yeah.
But if you want to wear a particular type of suit and then put an Atlas skin on it so that you look like you've got all like cool blues and creams, then you can go be Atlas, you know,
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
yeah.
Nice. And with that, the you talk about, you got to burn all the babies to make the next form. Do you see in combat there will ever be a use for using a lower evolution form of a character? Like, will
They
that
have
be?
lower control points. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're cheaper. You lose a bit of
Hmm.
power, but it adds versatility. So there will be a
Yep.
scenario where having even though you've got lower stats and you might not have the extra
Yep.
affinity, it's still going to
Yep.
be a viable option to play the lower tier.
Yeah, that's the whole purpose, is that the cost in terms of control points
Yep.
per unit of effectiveness should
Yep.
be equal.
And so
So yeah.
if you're building your deck and you can have multiple of the same character in it, so if you want to say have like a Ramfy and a Ramfire in your deck, you've got to have for competitive PvP at least two Ramphys to bring in there, one to turn into a
Yeah,
Ramfire.
yeah.
So you're going to want
Yeah.
multiples of the things that you're building in
Yeah,
your deck as well.
you can make your Ramfy become a Ramfire, but if you do that, it can't also
You
be
can't
a
use it for
Ramfy,
two
right?
of
So,
them.
yeah,
Yeah.
no. So you would still have to have two, and a reason why you might want to do that is because you think you want to go a fire build, but you're not sure if you want to then pivot out into maybe a magma build or something like that.
Yeah.
And so you might keep the Ramfy in there because it helps you to build up the fire affinity without costing you a lot of points. So that might be one reason why someone does it. But the thing to remember is that if you play both of them on the board at the same time, the lower one isn't going to be providing any sort of affinity points to your team. So the Ram Fire will give you the fire twice, like because it's double fire,
Inferno. Yep.
and then you'll get a synergy stack of the Slayer, which is effectively you'll get Slayer, you'll get Fighter, and you'll get Rogue. But then when you play the little guy, you already got that from the other one, so it doesn't count twice, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
But if you put out another character that is also Fire, but it's not in the same line, then that will count.
Yep. So it's just the same line. They shed the
The
buffs 'cause
same
only
line,
one.
yeah.
That's good. So you can
Yeah,
still have
it's
multiple
inside.
fires giving multiple bonuses. They just can't be the same.
Yeah. So if you put in, say, the pangolin line, well then you'll be getting a fire synergy stack.
Yep.
From that one as well.
Perfect. I think that's just about all I had for the straight combat side of things. Is there anything that you want to let us know about combat, or you're pretty happy to cap it there?
I mean, this is the most that I've talked about combat. There's a lot of stuff that people don't know that we've just gone over. So I think it's a pretty good understanding of the way that the game works.
Definitely.
I do have an extra system that I'm trying to get added in, which I may be too stupid to get it to work, but I'm going to try. And if I get that system in, it will give a little bit more of a visceral feel for who's got the most power inside of a battle. It'll sort of be a visual way of seeing if the battle is turning in one person's favor or another. And it'll give you a little bit of that understanding that I played well in the draft phase, and so therefore I'm going to be rewarded.
Yep.
But it's a contentious one inside of the team. So I've got to come up with something that's either really good or we'll scrap it.
Beautiful. And then I just want to talk a little bit about the open world side of things, because obviously we haven't really seen any open world gameplay yet. Are you guys at the stage where you've got people that can go in and run around in some of the areas and sort of
we did
encounters and stuff like that?
We did have a few videos. I don't know if they've been deleted.
I think the streams got deleted. I was chatting to Rallord about it.
Well, early on, we've had the overworld, at least a couple of the regions done. I think since January or February, something like that, but not with the characters. So the idea is that we have these worlds that we need to develop and set dress, which I have nothing to do with, by the way. My only contribution to that was coming up with the regions originally, like what the names of the regions are and stuff like that. And even from then, they've taken it up to a whole new level in terms of the visuals. One of the regions that I originally envisaged as something fairly basic. It's called the Halcyon Sea. They've now just taken it to a whole new level and it's starting to look really good. But in terms of the mechanics for the overworld features, we have the mechanics there, but we're in the process of polishing them to the point where we're happy to show them to the community.
Yeah.
The difference with the overworld and the auto battle is that the auto battle is like all on a flat surface. It's very controlled.
Yeah.
It's complicated as all hell, but in terms of the walking and animations, it's a bit easier to see.
Yeah.
So we've been able to show some of that stuff. Whereas with the overworld stuff, it's not yet at the point where we're super happy with it. And the main reason is because we put a lot of focus into the auto battler to start.
Yeah, definitely.
Put it this way, in the last month, we've made a massive amount of improvement to the movement mechanics and the overworld side because the number of people on that team has gone up significantly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And with that, what do you envision the general gameplay being? So as far as I know so far, what I've got is you got to pay to go exploring if it's above a tier 0s, if you want to catch tier 1s and above. And when you're exploring, you're going to be doing some mining, I call it herbalism, whatever you want to call it, picking up some plants.
Harvesting.
Harvesting, there you go. I suck at the words, but
that's it.
You're going to be going around doing that sort of stuff, and then obviously seeing these encounters that you go into. Now, you have your energy bar while you're doing that. So when you go exploring, you have a set amount of energy. And then we have heard about like scanning an encounter to know what's in it before you go into it. So is the gameplay behind that meant to be that when you're exploring, maybe mining something will use a bit of your energy bar, and once that gets to 0, you're done. And then maybe you could go, say if you got 100, I'm just using general figures here. If you've got 100 energy, maybe going into an encounter to fight Illuvials will cost 10 energy. But if you scan it, you can see what's in there, and that might cost you, say, 3 energy. Is that the sort of system of what
you're
exactly?
Yeah, 100%. What we're trying to do is come up with systems that are very easy for people to understand what it is.
Yep.
So, for example, in order to get anything in our game from a base level, anything that we call like a resource, and technically an alluvial is a resource.
Yep.
Anything like that, we just have different versions of that. So if you want to get the stuff that's inside of a plant, then you have to harvest. If you want to get the stuff that's inside of the surface level rocks, you mine. If you want to get the stuff outside of that's from an alluvial, you have to go into an encounter. If you're in Illuvium 0 and you want to bring stuff out of the deep earth in the ground, you have to do extraction.
Yep.
So there's 4 ways to get stuff. And then once you've got stuff, we have a single way of getting it to be something else, and that is the 0 point forge. And that's basically you put ingredients in, it burns them all, and you get a thing out. And that's effectively it. So across the whole game, we've tried to make these things really, really simple so that people can understand, I get my stuff, I smush it together, I've got new stuff. And how do I get my stuff? I go out into the world and I have a certain amount of energy that I can use to collect it. And I have to make some choices. Do I want to scan it and know what's in it? Or do I want to gamble and just go in and maybe it's something that I'm not super happy with. And now I've spent all of that energy, like you say, maybe 10 energy versus 3. And that's effectively what it is.
Yep.
It's a really, really simple system. We don't want people to go in there thinking that it's going to be some like ridiculously complicated thing with crazy, movement puzzles and, like it's not 15 genres in one. It's not meant to be an action adventure. You've got 2 power sources. You've got your kinetic energy and you've got your power, which is like your scanning. So kinetic energy recharges, and that allows you to do things like jump around and all sorts of movement. But all that movement is doing is just allowing you to freely go into the world. I don't want people to think that it's going to be like ridiculously difficult you've got to pull off some crazy combo to get somewhere.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to get places reasonably easy. And the whole purpose of that is if it became incredibly difficult to the point where you could fail, then when you pay money to go into that
You don't want that.
region,
Yeah.
it just kind of sucks, you know?
Yeah.
Like imagine getting a packet of cards
There's a,
and
yeah.
and and you're like, well, okay, there's 10 cards in there, but every third card you just go, oh, whoops, and it just drops into the water and you lose it.
Yeah.
You'd be like, I wish this was easier. So we're making it hard enough that it's more interesting than a packet of cards.
Yeah.
You have to go find it. You have to choose. Like out of your 10 cards in the deck that are in your region, it's like, do I want this one or this one? I can flip it over, but that costs me, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's effectively all that it is. And
to me,
it
it's
should be
like
fun.
as you go along, like my strategy would be when you're just getting into the game, just go into every encounter because you need everything essentially. And
Yep.
then, you know, once you're a bit more experienced in the game, you've caught a few things, maybe you're looking for those holographics, then you start scanning a lot more and trying to get the things that you're after. And obviously we do have
Yep.
the mag boots and the jetpack. And
Yep.
is it going to be like the scenario that areas you can only get to with the mag boots and jetpack may have a higher chance at those rarer encounters, or is it just purely for enjoyment of exploration?
Originally, we did look at it that way. So I mean, it could have even been that on previous streams, I might have said that we're segmenting it, but we will have places that you probably can't get to, but and those areas will be stronger, but we're not like really hard gating it.
Yeah,
So
like you'll still be able to get the same stuff in the general area. It just might be like
yeah.
a extra 1% chance that you get something rarer
Yeah.
in those areas.
The idea is that there will be certain spots where if that spawns, it's more likely to be a rare thing. And it could be that that's on the top of a mountain and you've got to be able to get the jetpack to go up there. But my point is, if some user finds a really creative way and they don't have a jetpack,
Yeah.
they want to get up there and they find a way to do it, well, good on you. You know,
Yeah,
you
some
can go
people
and
live for
get
that shit,
thing.
just trying to break the game and,
Yeah.
and do something they're not allowed to do.
Yeah.
So they can get their enjoyment out of that too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think I'm just about good. I was just gonna say you did all the lore and stuff like that as well. Is that correct? Or you had the basis for it?
I didn't do all of it. So originally I was writing some books and I had some ideas about some things and I pitched it to the other co-founders and their initial reaction was some parts are good, some parts sucks, right?
Yeah.
And which is fair enough, right? And so we worked together to come up with the base lore of the game. So it's not just me, it was all of them. And then after that, I started to write out some like actual scripts and some plot points and stuff like that. Went back to them with a more fleshed out thing. And since then, Von Neumann has been pretty integral to helping with that story.
Yep.
And we also have had writers help out. So we have a lead writer now who I just sort of integrate with. And like I basically said, here's what I've got. And now you've got to work with me to take it to another level.
Yep.
And so we're working through that. We do feel like we have a pretty good story, but I certainly don't want anyone to think that like I came up with all of it, because there's plenty of really good ideas in there that have come from plenty of people on the project. And originally the task was come up with a story that could eventually be a movie. And that's sort of how we're trying to look at it. Our story is very different to the way that a traditional single player game will operate. And that's because our game isn't technically single player, because you go out into a region and get stuff and someone else goes out into a region. Just because you're in your own instance doesn't mean that you don't have an impact on each other. If I collect a Rem Fire, then the chance of collecting Rem Fire has come down for everybody else. Plus he's now more powerful, so the next time someone tries to, it's going to be even less chance that they'll get him.
Yep.
And so there is a little bit of impact back and forth. I can sell stuff to you. So there's a little bit of multiplayer and a little bit of single player. And so it didn't feel right to just give people a storyline where it's just like you play the game and chapter 1, chapter 2, and then you get to the end and you get to see what's happening. Because if you got there before someone else, it would feel a bit like, well, how come I get it and you get it? Very similar to an MMO. So
Yeah.
the way that we've decided to do it is effectively just to say, stuff everybody, you're not the hero of this story. You're just a person
Yeah.
in there. You're just one of these Verlaine that have crashed down to the planet. You don't know what's going on. And all you're doing is you can help out the storyline in various ways, and you can collect things and be part of the economy. But when it comes to the cinematic parts that we put in, so we've planned a cinematic for launch, which will be just like a small clip that will go much more heavily into the story.
Yeah.
And then we've planned like an end game cinematic that'll happen probably 6 months into the game dropping, which will conclude that first set. And you're not going to be in that, right?
Yeah.
That storyline is going to be your commander, who is a character called Len, who's doing her own thing.
Yep.
And you don't get to see that except through some various elements.
It's kind of like you're like someone from the ship who's crashed. You're just a pleb basically. You're just someone that's there, that's just been working on the ship. You crash, and your captain say missing, and as you explore, the cutscenes you'll get will be a reflection on what her progress has been. Is that the kind of...
So you won't get cutscenes specifically. Okay. What you will get is there is a type of media that we are planning that I'm just not going to go into at the moment.
That's cool. That's cool.
That you will be able to consume.
Yep.
And what it will be is you could be the one who finds it. So for example, the obelisks are all, at the start of the game, all of the obelisks are locked.
Yep.
One of the main goals is to unlock all of the obelisks, because otherwise you can't get to those regions, right? At the start of the game, there'll be Crimson Waste and I think Brightland Steps. That'll be, and maybe we'll keep Brightland Steps locked and just let people go in Crimson Waste. And so if you want to unlock that, you have to do things in the world that will allow you to unlock it. And you'll be, I don't know, not famous or anything like that, but it'll be, put it this way, you'll get an NFT for your troubles.
Yeah.
And if we were to do that as a movie, the movie would show mostly that main character doing what you did, right? So it'll be, so it'll be a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with it. That's cool.
If that makes sense. So what you'll be able to do is... So you can
still have that sense of identity on your own character, but still enjoy a story behind it without feeling like, your journey is yours, but you're following the path of someone else.
Yeah, and to be honest, the journey for the players at the start is obviously very simple. It is, you can level up your character and you can level up your Illuvials. You can fight and you can collect stuff. It's your journey at the start will not involve you going and making a space colony and setting up buildings and putting like destructible buildings up, and then you can build out an empire and you can do espionage. Like we don't have all of that, right? Like what we have is you run around in a world, you collect things and you fight and you get better at that the whole time. As we expand out the world, we can add those things in. Like even to begin with, your only character customization is going to be your helmet and your suit.
Yeah.
So that will be what determines what you look like, possibly like maybe a body size, something like that. But we're not going to give people a million facial features. You're not going to have the color wheel.
You keep it basic to get it implemented, all that stuff. But still, like I think like you can't underplay the... Like in that sort of storyline where it's like you are just a member of the ship and then you're following the captain's footpath, like it does still give a player a sense of being something in the space, even if it's not customizable. So it's like that nice.
Yeah. It helps a little bit. Yeah, it helps. It'll help people because what will happen is someone will discover something and then they get a choice of if they want to share it or if they don't want to share it. And we're gonna give those people a period, like a grace period, before they have to share it.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can only hold it to yourself as a secret for a little while.
So you be the first person to find the obelisk and activate it, and you can go. You can go.
You wouldn't be able to act.
Oh, you can't
No, no,
activate
no.
it.
You wouldn't be able to activate it, but you'd be able to hold other people back from it. You would know I've found it.
Yeah.
No one else gets this, so you could troll people for a week
Yeah,
or so
that's
if
good.
you
That's
want.
good.
And then there's other things besides the activation codes that you can find,
Yeah.
and effectively the way that the storyline will play out is through other media. It won't be interactive. It won't be, press X
Oh,
now
yeah,
in this sort
100%.
of
Yeah.
semi cutscene and stuff like that. Maybe eventually we'll be able to do that. I do like that type of storyline,
Yeah.
but it's more early on. We didn't know, can we get a whole production team together to do all of these things? We're in the middle of COVID lockdowns and it's
Yeah.
very difficult so we just decided, let's just stick to a basic loop, and we can do, there's plenty of games out there that started off with something basic. Blizzard with Warcraft,
Yeah.
that wasn't a storyline, but by the time
Oh,
they got to their 900th game, it's an amazing story that spans across generations and all sorts of things. League of Legends, a very similar one.
yeah.
They had a particular storyline. They actually scrapped the whole thing and restarted again, and now they've got an anime coming out later this
Yeah, I
year,
saw that.
which goes into the whole world, right? So that's the way that we're looking at doing it, is start off with a good core gameplay loop and give people a bit of story, and hopefully they like it. I enjoy the story,
Yeah.
and I think we've done a good job with it, but I can't guarantee that people are going to
Oh,
love it. And
everyone's different, so 100%. And but at least what I like, and so this game sort of like ties a bunch of things in for me. That's why I'm really excited about it. Is you've got a really nice PVE loop, which is go out, catch things, but there's a chance of getting something really rare. Which for me personally, I was always hunting shinies in Pokemon. I love that sort of PVE loop. But then you've also got a really nice competitive PvP loop that has balanced stats, which doesn't make you feel like you have to grind something out to be able to compete with people. You just have to get that character and then you can compete. So it's got a really nice loop of both PvE and PvP that I think will keep entertained. And then a nice little story, because once you get immersed into the gameplay of something, then you get interested in the story and how it could evolve.
Yeah, if it was all up to me, then we wouldn't have had the PvE loop. It wouldn't have been as amazing as what it is. Like there's the two other co-founders, they get the credit for that. On the PvP side, they've had impacts in it. They've helped out with it, made characters, all that sort of stuff. But that's sort of where my heart lies in competitive play. And I've always wanted to have something that could eventually be something that people stream, and we've tried to make every part of it accessible to streamers.
Yeah.
Like even to the point where we're not fully done with it yet. Internally in the production build, we have the ability to save a game and render it out as a video. Right? It's just a video to your hard drive. And that video, that's how we get the graphical fidelity that we do in the assets, is because they're actually rendered in a way that allows it to be like, if you've got a weaker PC, you can crank all of the stats up and it might just take you a little bit longer to render. You won't get like 1 frame per frame. It might take you, say, 5 minutes to get a 2-minute battle or something like that. But that allows you to get ray tracing on and allows you to have like the highest level of details in all of the characters, all that sort of stuff. And we have a camera that you can customize to like track around and stuff like that.
Oh, so it's kind of like, I don't know if you'll get this reference, but for me, it used to be when I played Halo, which is a shooting game on Xbox, you could record the match and then you got a custom fly around camera and you could look anywhere in that match and you can... So that's cool.
Yeah, the only difference between us and Halo is that recording would be sort of just like Halo quality, whereas ours is a lot higher quality than what you'll get playing the game. I mean, if you've got a really powerful PC, you'll get high quality no matter what you're doing. But for the sort of person who's on a low-end PC, they might have to lower the settings down. They might not be able to get all of the groom settings and stuff like that. And they'll have just as much fun. But then if there's that one battle that they're like, you know what, that was so cool, I was nearly about to die, and then this guy got off his Omega ability. If you want to record that one, you'll just go in and press it. and it'll just load it up for you.
And it gets that
We don't.
quality. The recording will have the quality.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's nice.
yeah. We don't have it done in the release version of the game. So like we package the builds up and use them internally. There's still a few. We've got some really smart people working on it, and it's just not perfect yet. But
Yeah.
so we might not have it for launch, but we're hoping that we can get it done at some point, because that way on our server you would be able to see all of your games,
Yep.
all of your mates' games, everyone who's ever existed's games, because again, all it is just a tiny text file. And then you would load that up, you could watch it, and if you want to record it in high quality, you just press a button and then boom.
That's cool. And I've got to ask the question now, because it's probably one of the most commonly asked questions in Discord when I'm in there. PC requirements, you probably don't know yet, but is your aim to make it accessible to most people, not to have like a crazy requirement on your PC?
Oh no, everyone's going to have triple 39. No, yeah, it's you'll have to have some level of graphics card in there. At the moment, we're not committing to anything, but we're trying to get it to run at 30 frames per second on a 1050 Ti.
Yep.
And that would be with like a medium settings for it. But it runs, at the moment, it runs quite well. I have a fairly powerful PC, and when you look at it on my PC, it just looks absolutely drop dead gorgeous.
Yeah.
And when you look at it on a lower PC, we're probably not quite there yet to have it looking as good as what it can for that PC. There's a lot of optimization that goes into that. And if we go to mobile, we have to then sort of change the assets even further, get them to be, low poly count and lower the texture quality, that sort of stuff. And so we will, and we'll probably fix the camera on the mobile mode so that you can't like zoom in and look at a character's eyeball and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which currently you can do that in the current version. You can go up really close and see something like right next to it and see like water dripping off of its skin and stuff. So if we do the mobile side, it will be a cut down version, which means we'll keep on effectively optimizing and lowering it down.
And the mobile version's aiming for next year sometime. And that's the other thing. Like, even if the PC is too hard, once the mobile client does come out, you've got emulators, and then anyone will be able to play it on any PC that can run an emulator anyway. So you gain that access as well.
It'll be one of those things where we don't see any reason to not have it on any particular platform.
Yeah.
There's no part of the game that couldn't work really well on a PlayStation 5.
Just the legalities of trying to get it there.
Yeah. But in in theory, it could work there, no problems.
Yeah. Definitely.
So it would be perfectly acceptable to have it on basically everything. The trickiest part would be if you're on a PlayStation 5, we would have to do a lot of reconfiguration of the user interface for the auto battle.
Yeah.
The overworld would actually probably be totally sweet, right? Like it would
just put your controls in away you go.
Put your controls in away you go. But on the auto battle, it would be a little bit different. But I can't see it taking. It's not a problem that I look at and go, oh no, I wonder if we can solve that. It's just a matter of putting the time towards it.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I've held you for how long? Are we up to? About an hour and 10 minutes. So is there any final words that you want to go through? Anything you want to mention before we leave?
I would just say to anyone, our Discord is where most of the action happens if you want to see the leaks. We're trying to be as transparent as we possibly can. We have a council that operates and does the voting on decisions. So I'm not even on the council of my own project. So we try to have it be as open and community driven as possible. So please visit us on the Illuvium Discord, and you'll be able to see leaks as they happen. I try to spend about half an hour a day answering people's questions. Yesterday, our Discord is so big now that
over 100,000 now, yeah.
Yeah, and we have a lot of channels as well. I had about 35 pings that I decided to go through. It took me about maybe an hour. By the time I finished it, I still had 20 pings that came back. So, I do try to be there. I try to be there for the community. The other co-founders also are always active in the channel. They'll give you their own insights. into the game. They'll give you they'll give you more leaks than I will. That's for sure. and yeah, we all bring a different sort of experience to the game. So we're trying to get something that is community driven from the very start. There is a bootstrapping process to that where there's certain decisions that we have to sort of take control of to make sure that it's just operating quickly. Over time, we see it being just even more decentralized and better. And it's actually funny because as we've started to give more power over to the community has oftentimes sort of hit back and said, actually, no, we want you guys to just do this one. It makes sense for you guys to just make these decisions. But we want it to be done right. And
through a vote, through the council.
Yeah. People have contentious decisions all the time, or they'll not be happy with what I say or anything like that. And the way that I look at it is, if I'm wrong, and just let me know, and we'll get through it. But I don't want anyone to feel like it's an antagonistic process. It's a process that is robust. There's a good discussion there. And in the end, we always come up with a better outcome out of it. And I think it has helped empower us to be something better than what we could be. And again, it's not my idea. I didn't originally have the idea or having it be like all decentralized. Like I said, Kieran was the one that came to me and said, decentralized finance is the way to go. When we started, I had no idea what decentralized finance even was. And I just sort of had a little bit of a background in the game side of things.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you very much for that long ass interview. It was good. I think I got a lot of good stuff out of that. I hadn't heard anything about combat, so I appreciate you being as honest as you could with us and letting a lot of info out. So
you got more because you knew more to start off with, so you knew the right questions. A lot of people, they don't know as much as what you knew. So if people want to get more out of me, they've got to learn a bit more about the game.
100%. Well, thanks very much, dude. And guys,
thank you.
Make sure you jump over there into the Discord. It's a great place. The moderators as well, really good, and you get all the leaks. So that's the handy part. So
that's it.
Thanks for watching. Hope you guys have an awesome day, and we'll look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.
Thank you.